Michael never liked surprises, especially on quiet evenings. That Sunday, the sun had just slipped behind the trees and the house was calm. He had finished dinner, poured himself some coffee, and was about to sit down with a book when someone knocked on the door. The sound startled him because he wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened the door, his breath caught. Standing there were Daniel and Claire's old college friends, a couple he hadn't seen in months. They were the kind of people who once seemed perfect together, always laughing, always sure of each other. But now they looked different. Daniel's face was tired, his eyes dull, and Claire looked like she had been crying for days. "Mike," Daniel said, voice quiet and uncertain. "Can we come in, please?" Michael stepped aside without saying a word. The air changed as soon as they walked in. It was heavy, thick, with something unspoken. He led them to the living room and gestured for them to sit. He tried to smile, but the tension in the room made it impossible. "All right," he said finally, breaking the silence. "You two look like you've been through something. What's going on?" Daniel rubbed his hands together, avoiding Michael's eyes. "It's about us," he began slowly. "Our marriage. It's not good right now." Michael felt a small ache in his chest. He had known Daniel for years, had been best man at their wedding, and had always believed they'd last forever. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said carefully. "But what happened?" Claire's voice came out soft, fragile. "We've been trying to fix things. We've gone to counseling. We've talked for hours. But nothing feels right anymore. It's like we've lost something we can't name." She looked up then, and Michael saw the sadness in her eyes. It wasn't anger or frustration, it was heartbreak. Something deep inside her was fading, and she didn't know how to stop it. Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "We came because we need your help," he said. That caught Michael off guard. "My help?" "Yes," Claire said quickly. "I know this sounds strange, Mike, but you've always been someone who could see things clearly. You've always understood both of us better than anyone else. Maybe you can help us understand what went wrong." Michael stared at her. There was something in the way she said it, a mix of hope and pain, that made him uneasy. He didn't know what kind of help they were asking for, but he could tell this wasn't going to be simple. "Claire," he said carefully, "I'm not sure I'm the right person for this." Daniel gave a weak smile. "You might be the only one, actually. You were there when we started dating. You saw us before life got complicated." Michael nodded slowly. He remembered those early days, how they'd all been inseparable. How Daniel and Claire had been so in love, it made everyone else believe in happy endings. Back then, Claire had been full of light, funny, curious, kind. But even as he remembered, Michael also remembered something else. There had been a time years ago, before she and Daniel started dating, when he had quietly fallen for her too. He had buried those feelings, of course. She chose Daniel, and Michael had accepted it. But now, seeing her again, looking broken and lost, those old memories stirred faintly, like smoke from a long-dead fire. He took a slow breath. "All right," he said finally. "I'll listen. I don't know how much help I can be, but I'll try." Claire looked relieved. "Thank you," she whispered. "That's all we needed." The three of them talked for a while. Daniel explained how work, stress, and distance had pulled them apart. Claire admitted that she felt unseen, like she was living beside Daniel, not with him. Michael listened quietly, offering small bits of advice when he could. He could see they still cared for each other. But something between them had shifted, something neither of them could quite reach anymore. At one point, Claire's hand brushed against the cup she was holding. And for a second, her wedding ring caught the light. It glimmered faintly, a small reminder of what they were trying to save. Michael couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions: sadness for them, guilt for what he once felt, and confusion about why they had come to him of all people. After an hour, Daniel stood up. "Thanks, Mike," he said quietly. "I didn't know who else to talk to." Michael walked them to the door. The night air was cool and the street was silent. Claire paused before getting into the car and looked back at him. Her eyes were still tired, but softer now, as if she'd found some comfort just being there. "Thank you, Mike," she said, "for listening." He nodded. not trusting himself to speak. Then they were gone, leaving him standing in the doorway, watching the red glow of their taillights fade into the darkness. When he went back inside, the house felt emptier than before. He sat down on the couch and stared at the 2 empty coffee cups on the table. The night replayed in his mind, the look in Claire's eyes. The silence between them, the strange sense that something deeper had passed between the 3 of them. He didn't want to think about it. But he couldn't help wondering if their visit had really been about fixing their marriage, or if it was the start of something none of them fully understood yet. The thought unsettled him. He picked up his book again, but he couldn't focus. Every few seconds, his eyes drifted back to the door, half expecting another knock. But the night stayed quiet. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of leaves brushing against the windows. Michael leaned back, closed his eyes, and tried to shake off the feeling that life had just shifted in a way he couldn't yet see. He told himself it was just an old friendship, just concern for 2 people he cared about. But deep down, he knew something had changed. And for the first time in years, he felt a strange pull toward something uncertain, fragile, and dangerously human. He didn't know it yet. But that quiet Sunday evening had just become the beginning of a story that would test the meaning of love, loyalty, and the thin line between helping and hurting the people you care about most. Michael woke up the next morning still thinking about Daniel and Claire's visit. Their words replayed in his mind like a song he couldn't stop hearing. Something about the way Claire had looked at him tired but hopeful kept tugging at him. He wanted to believe they had only come for advice, but deep down he felt there was more to it. Still, he tried to brush it off. Maybe they were just going through a rough patch. 2 days later, his phone buzzed. It was Claire. "Can we meet for coffee? Daniel's at work. I just need to talk." The message was simple, but it made his heart race. He almost said no, but curiosity won. When he arrived at the cafe, she was already there, sitting by the window with 2 cups on the table. She smiled faintly when she saw him, but her eyes still carried the same sadness. "Thanks for coming," she said. "I didn't know who else to talk to." Michael sat down, trying to act calm. "It's fine, Claire. What's going on?" She hesitated, stirring her coffee even though she hadn't added anything to it. "Daniel and I barely talk anymore. It's like we're living separate lives. We tried therapy, but every time we sit in that room, it feels like we're pretending." Michael listened quietly. He could see how lost she was. "So, what do you need from me?" Her eyes met his, steady but full of emotion. "I need to understand what love feels like again." The words hit him harder than he expected. "Claire, I'm not sure what you mean," he said carefully. She leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't mean anything wrong, Mike. I just need to remember who I was before all this pressure, before marriage became a routine. You knew me before I changed. You saw me when I was still." Michael froze. He didn't know what to say. It wasn't that she was asking for anything inappropriate. It was that she wanted connections, something real. And she thought he could help her find it. He took a deep breath. "Claire, I care about both of you. But this could get complicated." She nodded slowly. "No, but I promise I'm not asking for anything you'd regret. I just need to talk. To remember." There was something so sincere in her tone that Michael couldn't refuse. He agreed, and for the next few weeks they met now and then, sometimes at the cafe, sometimes for short walks in the park near his apartment. They didn't talk about romance or marriage problems all the time. Sometimes they just talked about music, work, or silly memories from college. Slowly, her smile began to return, and she started to sound like the Claire he remembered from years ago. But even as she seemed lighter, something in Michael grew heavier. Every time she laughed, it stirred an ache he hadn't felt in a long time. He didn't want to feel it, but it was there, quiet, uninvited, and impossible to ignore. One afternoon, after a walk, Claire stopped near the park bench and said, "You ever think about the past, Mike? About how one small choice can change your whole life?" Michael smiled faintly. "Sometimes. But thinking about it too much can make you crazy." She looked at him then, her expression soft but serious. You know, back in college, I always wondered what would have happened if things had gone differently between us. He felt his chest tighten. Claire, you chose Daniel. That was the right choice. I know, she said quickly, and I don't regret that. But I can't help wondering if maybe we lost something along the way, something real. The silence that followed was heavy. They didn't say anything for a while. Michael knew he should change the subject. But the truth was, part of him had wondered the same thing for years. That night when he got home, he couldn't sleep. His mind kept replaying her voice, the way she had looked at him. He told himself he was only helping a friend. But it didn't feel that simple anymore. A few days later, Daniel called him unexpectedly. His voice was calm but full of emotion. Hey man, I wanted to thank you. Claire's been better lately, happier. I don't know what you said to her, but it's helping. Michael froze. He didn't know how to respond. I'm just listening to her, he said. Sometimes people just need to feel heard. Daniel sighed. Yeah, I guess I stopped doing that somewhere along the way. I'm just glad she has someone she can talk to. That phone call hit Michael hard. He hung up and sat in silence for a long time. He felt guilty because Daniel trusted him completely, and yet every time he saw Claire, the air between them felt charged, fragile, full of things neither dared to say. One evening, Claire showed up at his apartment. She was quiet at first, standing in the doorway with a nervous look on her face. I shouldn't be here, she said. Daniel thinks I'm visiting my sister. Michael's stomach dropped. Claire, this isn't a good idea. I know, she said, tears in her eyes. But I needed to see you. Every time I talk to you, I feel like I can breathe again. He didn't know what to do. Part of him wanted to tell her to leave, but another part couldn't stand to see her cry. He handed her a glass of water and said softly, Claire, you're chasing something you already have. You love Daniel, you just forgot why. She shook her head. I don't know if I do anymore. I don't know what love even means now. They sat in silence for a long time, the only sound the faint hum of the city outside. Michael finally said, then find out. Talk to him. Tell him what you told me. Don't give up yet. Claire nodded slowly, wiping her tears. You're right. I just needed to hear it from you. When she left, Michael watched her go, feeling both relieved and hollow. He knew he had done the right thing, but the weight in his chest didn't go away. That night, he looked out the window and realized how fragile the line between love and loyalty could be. He wasn't sure what would happen next. But he knew things had already gone too far for any of them to go back to the way things were. Michael didn't know it yet, but the moment he chose to help Claire remember who she used to be, he had also begun to remember who he used to be, the man who once believed love could fix anything, until it came knocking on his door again. Weeks passed, and Michael's life began to revolve around moments he never planned for, quiet coffee talks. Long walks, short phone calls from Claire that always began with, Do you have a minute? What started as him trying to help soon became something else, something harder to name. Claire seemed lighter now. She smiled more, laughed easily, and talked about things that had nothing to do with her marriage. But behind those smiles, there was still a faint sadness, one that only showed when she thought he wasn't looking. One crisp afternoon, they met at a small park near the river. The leaves were turning gold, and the breeze carried that early sign of autumn. They sat on the same bench they'd come to call their spot. Claire had brought coffee for both of them, her hands warm around the paper cup. Daniel's been trying, she said quietly. He's changed a little. He's kinder. He listens now. But I don't know. Something still feels missing. Michael looked at her, unsure what to say. Maybe you're both trying to find the same thing, but in different ways, he offered. Claire smiled faintly. You always make things sound simple, he shrugged. Sometimes it is. Sometimes we just overthink the things that used to come naturally. They sat in silence for a moment. The river shimmered under the sunlight, and a family passed by laughing, the sound soft and distant. Then Claire turned toward him and said something that froze him. You know, Mike, when I'm with you, I feel like I remember who I was before everything got complicated. He looked away quickly. That's good, he said, but his voice didn't sound steady. She tilted her head slightly. You were always honest with me, even when I didn't want to hear it. Daniel used to be that way too. Now I just get silence. Michael didn't reply. He didn't trust himself to. Every time she opened up like that, it pulled him closer to a place he knew he shouldn't go. The next day, Daniel called. Hey man, he said cheerfully, Claire's been better. We even had dinner together last night. I think things are improving. Michael felt a mix of relief and guilt. That's great, Daniel, he said. I'm glad. Yeah, Daniel continued. Honestly, I think you helped more than you realize. She talks about how calm she feels after seeing you. I owe you one, Mike. Michael forced a smile that Daniel couldn't see. You don't owe me anything. After hanging up, he sat in silence for a long time. He didn't want to admit it, but every time Claire came to him instead of her husband, it blurred the line between friendship and something deeper. He told himself he was doing the right thing, helping her heal, but the truth was starting to feel heavier. A week later, Claire stopped by his apartment again. It was raining hard and she was soaked, hair clinging to her face. Sorry, she said, breathless. I didn't know where else to go. Michael handed her a towel. Claire, what's wrong? She sighed. We argued again. About nothing and everything. He says I've been distant. He thinks I'm distracted. Maybe he's right. Michael wanted to comfort her, but he also knew how fragile things had become. You both just need space, he said gently. Claire shook her head. I don't think space will fix this. I think we're just lost. She sat down on the couch, clutching the towel. Her eyes met his, and for a long second, neither of them spoke. The air between them was thick, filled with words that didn't need to be said. Finally, she whispered, Do you ever think some people come back into your life to remind you what love feels like? Michael's heart pounded. Claire, this isn't fair to Daniel or to you. Tears welled up in her eyes. I know, but I can't ignore how I feel when I'm with you. It's not about wanting anything. It's about remembering. He ran a hand through his hair, torn between emotion and reason. Then remember, Claire. But don't mistake the past for the present. You're married, and he's still trying. She looked down, nodding slowly. You're right. I just needed to hear it from you. After she left, the apartment felt unbearably quiet. The rain had shown of everything he couldn't say. The following week, things seemed calm again. Claire texted less, and Michael took that as a sign she was focusing on her marriage. But one evening, he received a short message. Can I see you tomorrow? Just once more. He agreed, though something in his gut told him not to. They met at the park again. The sky was gray, the wind cold. Claire looked different, tired, but peaceful. As if she had finally made a decision. I told Daniel everything, she said quietly. Michael's chest tightened. Everything. Not everything, she admitted, but enough. I told him about our talks, about how much you've helped me see things clearly. I told him I was confused, but that it wasn't your fault. He didn't know how to react. What did he say? She sighed. He was hurt, but he listened. He said he wants to try again, properly this time. No more pretending. It's good, Michael said softly. That's really good. Claire looked at him then, her eyes full of emotion. I meant it when I said you reminded me who I was, Mike. I'll always be grateful for that. He nodded, trying to keep his voice steady. That's what friends do. She smiled sadly. You've always been more than that. Before he could reply, she stood up. I should go. He's waiting for me. As she walked away, Michael stayed on the bench, watching until she disappeared down the path. A strange mix of relief and loss washed over him. He knew it was for the best she belonged with her husband, but it didn't make it easier. That night, Daniel called again. She told me about everything, he said quietly. About the talks, about how you were there for her. I just want to thank you, Mike. You helped her find her way back. Michael forced a small laugh. I didn't do much. You did more than you think, Daniel said. She's different now. We're different. I think we have a chance again." When the call ended, Michael sat by the window, looking at the dark sky. He felt drained, but strangely at peace. He knew he had done the right thing, even if it cost him something he couldn't name. He realized then that love isn't always about possession. It's sometimes about helping someone find their way, even if it means letting them go. And as the rain began to fall again outside, Michael whispered to himself, maybe that's what real love looks like, the kind that asks for nothing but wishes the other person well. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and let the sound of the rain drown out the ache in his heart. Knowing that some stories don't need happy endings to be beautiful, they just need honesty. A few weeks passed and Michael tried to move on. The quiet in his apartment felt heavier now, but he told himself this was how things were meant to be. Claire had chosen her path, and he had no right to interfere. Still, every morning when he poured his coffee, he caught himself thinking about her laugh, her voice, the way she used to thank him for simply listening. He missed her presence, but more than that, he missed the feeling of being needed. One evening, as the last bit of sunlight faded, a knock echoed at his door again. For a moment, he thought he imagined it. But when he opened the door, Claire stood there, her eyes red, her face pale, holding a folded piece of paper in her hand. "Claire," he said, surprised. "What happened?" She hesitated, then stepped inside. "Daniel found my journal," she said softly. "He read everything, every word about you." Michael's heart sank. "You told me you didn't write much about us." "I didn't mean to," she said quickly. "But I wrote about how you made me feel seen again. About how you reminded me who I was before everything fell apart." He read that and thought it meant I didn't love him anymore. Michael felt a wave of guilt wash over him. "Claire, I never wanted to come between you two." "I know," she whispered, "but sometimes even the truth hurts." He said he needs time. He's leaving for a while to stay with his brother. He said he can't look at me without seeing you. Silence filled the room. Michael could hear his own heartbeat. "What about you?" he asked quietly. She looked down at the letter in her hands. "I don't know. I don't want to lose him, but I can't undo what's been said. I came here to say goodbye, Mike. For real this time." Michael's chest tightened. He wanted to stop her, to tell her to stay, but he knew this wasn't his story to rewrite. He nodded slowly. "Maybe this is what was supposed to happen," he said. "Maybe this is how you both find your way back to yourselves, if not to each other." Tears filled her eyes. "You always say the right thing even when it hurts." She placed the letter on his table. "This is for you. Don't open it now. Just keep it, Claire," he said softly. "I'll always care about you. But I want you to be happy, whatever that looks like." She smiled sadly. "You help me remember what love feels like. I just wish remembering didn't have to hurt this much." Then, without another word, she turned and walked to the door. The moment it closed behind her, Michael felt the finality of it. The quiet that followed was deeper than before. Almost peaceful, but also painfully empty. Days passed, then weeks. There were no calls, no messages. Michael went back to his normal routine work. Coffee, quiet evenings, but something inside him had shifted. He had learned what it meant to love selflessly, to care without claiming, to let go even when every part of him wanted to hold on. Then, one morning, an envelope arrived in his mailbox. The handwriting was familiar, soft, and looping. It wasn't from Claire, it was from Daniel. Inside was a small postcard from a coastal town in Oregon. The message was short, just a few lines. "We're rebuilding. Thank you for reminding her who she was. You helped us more than you'll ever know." Michael read the words twice, his eyes stinging. He sat down by the window, sunlight spilling over the table. For the first time in months, he smiled, not a forced one, but the kind that comes when something inside finally settles. He was relieved. They were trying again. Maybe all of it had meant something after all. He reached for the letter Claire had left behind. It had been sitting unopened on his desk for weeks, waiting for this moment. With careful hands, he unfolded it. Inside were just a few lines written in her graceful handwriting. "Some love isn't meant to be lived. It's meant to be remembered. Thank you for reminding me what it feels like to be alive." Michael stared at the words, his chest heavy but warm. He folded the letter back and placed it in the drawer beside his journal. Then he whispered, "Then I'll remember." From that day on, he carried her memory not as a wound, but as a quiet lesson. Sometimes people cross our paths not to stay, but to wake up something we'd forgotten in ourselves. Months later, as spring returned, Michael took a trip to the same park where they used to meet. The trees were green again, the river calm. He sat on the old bench and watched the water flow, thinking about how life keeps moving, even after the hardest goodbyes. He didn't feel lonely anymore. He felt grateful that he got to know a love that asked for nothing, a connection that existed in silence and honesty. It wasn't about what could have been. It was about what was two people who met at the wrong time but still gave each other something true. He looked up at the sky and smiled faintly. "Be happy, Claire," he murmured. Then he stood, took one last look at the river, and walked away, lighter than he had felt in months. That night, as he turned off the lights and sat on his couch, the city lights glowing through the window, he realized something simple but powerful. Not all stories are meant to end with love, found some end with peace made. And for Michael, that peace was enough. He didn't need to chase what could have been. He had already lived something rare, something that changed him quietly, completely, and forever. From that moment, he carried her memory not as regret, but as a reminder that even brief connections can leave lasting marks, that love can exist in the spaces between words, and that letting go can sometimes be the purest form of love there is. And so, as another night settled over the city, Michael whispered one final thought into the silence. Some love isn't about forever, it's about understanding why it happened at all. Then he closed his eyes, smiled softly, and finally let her go, not in sadness, but in gratitude.